Hi there, how are you?
I'm well, how about you?
Good.
It's really not me talking. Are we okay now? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce this year's keynote speaker. As Jonathan said, my name is Jeff Bova. I head up commercial at Eurogen Pharma. We are a company based in Renana, Israel. Our headquarters are in New York. We are a clinical late-stage biotech company committed to changing treatment paradigms for patients suffering from urologic cancers and other urological conditions. We have developed a novel drug technology. It's called RT Gel Technology Platform. Basically, it's a proprietary sustained-release hydrogel that is a liquid at lower temperatures, but then converts to a gel at the body's temperature. The gel hopefully has the potential to improve the therapeutic options, the profiles of existing drugs, and is designed to enable longer exposure of those drugs and medications, making a local therapy for urologists a potentially more effective treatment option. The timing couldn't be better for us. Just this week, our investigational asset, UGN-101, which many of you may have referred to as Mitagel, was granted breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA for the treatment of low-grade upper tract urothelial cancer, so low-grade UTUC. With this designation, we join a very select group of oncology product candidates to receive breakthrough. Some of the criteria for breakthrough require you to show preliminary clinical evidence that demonstrates the use of this drug may result in substantial improvement over what's currently being used. This is supported through our compelling results from an interim analysis that were presented, our phase 3 Olympus study that was presented in May at this year's AUA. Breakthrough does not mean the drug has been approved. It is still an investigational agent. We will work closely with the FDA over the next, hopefully, 6 to 8 months as we get closer to potential approval. In addition to UGN-101, we also have another asset, UGN-102, which is being studied in bladder cancer population, and it is currently enrolling in a phase 2b study. We hope for data to come out first half of next year. If interested in any of those, we have a medical booth here in the exhibit. So certainly an exciting time. We believe this is just the beginning of what the possible outcomes could be with the RT Gel platform, which is why I look forward to continued collaboration with LUGPA, as well as striving to bring these innovative therapies to patients in an area with an unmet medical need. Eurogen will be committed partners to LUGPA for years to come. Thank you again for this opportunity to introduce the work that we're doing at Eurogen, and thank you again for the opportunity to introduce today's keynote speaker. We are honored to have this individual to be with us today. John Maxwell is a leadership expert, a speaker, and author. He speaks annually to Fortune 500 companies, international government leaders, and organizations that include West Point and the National Football League. John is a New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Business Week best-selling author, and 3 of his books, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, Developing the Leader Within You, and The 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader, have each sold over 1 million copies. John's newest release, Leadershift, shares the 11 shifts he has made over the course of his career that set him up for new and exciting achievements and resulted in the leadership expert that he is today. So with that, please welcome John Maxwell.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, very much. Good afternoon. It's great to be with you. Thank you for the opportunity of sharing about my favorite subject, leadership. But before I do that, let's take a moment, okay, and let's get acquainted. My name's John. On the count of 3, give me your name. 1, 2, 3. Nice to meet you. My wife Margaret and I have been married for 49 years, and we have 2 children, 5 grandchildren. Grandchildren are God's gift to you for not killing your children. And I was speaking at a convention recently, and I was talking about grandchildren to them, and I was sharing at that time that when you look at that first grandchild and you hold that baby in your arms, you just kind of are amazed, and then you ask a question: why did intelligence skip a generation? So I was telling that story, and I had forgotten that my son Joel was in the audience. So he met me at the green room when it was all over, and he was waiting for me. And I said, Joel, I was just kidding about, intelligence skipping a generation. He said, no, it's okay, Dad. He said, I think you're right. I said, you do? Hello. And he said, yes. He said, just last week, Grandpa and I had that very same discussion. One more thing before I teach on leadership. I'm 71, and it just seems like when you get about 70, you get wisdom, and you begin to understand things you never understood before. And so I'm going to read you something on life that I just kind of think is humorous and kind of puts everything in perspective. So within a couple of minutes, you're going to understand life perhaps a little differently than you ever have before. On the first day, God created the dog, and God said, sit all day by the door of your house and bark at anybody that comes by. I'm going to give you a lifespan of 20 years. And the dog said, that's too long to be barking. Give me 10 years, I'll give you back the other 10. God agreed. On the second day, God created the monkey. God said, entertain people, do monkey tricks, make them laugh. I'll give you a lifespan of 20 years. And the monkey said, how boring, monkey tricks for 20 years? I don't think so. The dog gave you back 10 years, so I'll do that too, okay? God agreed. So on the third day, God created the cow. God said, you must go out in the field with the farmer all day long, suffer under the sun, have calves to support the farmer, give milk. I'm going to give you a 60-year lifespan. The cow said, that's kind of a tough life that you want me to live for 60 years. Let me have 20, and I'll give you back the other 40. God agreed. So on the fourth day, God created man. He said, eat, sleep, play, marry, enjoy your life. I'm going to give you a 20-year lifespan. And man said, what? Only 20 years? I'll tell you what, I'll take my 20, add the 40 that the cow gave you back, the 10 the monkey gave you back, and the 10 that the dog gave you back. That makes 80. Okay, God said, you've got a deal. So that's why the first 20 years of our lives, we eat, sleep, play, and enjoy ourselves. For the next 40 years, we slave in the sun to support our family. For the next 10 years, we do monkey tricks to entertain the grandchildren. For the last 10 years, we sit on the front porch and we bark at everybody that goes by. You've just had life explained to you, haven't you, huh? Okay. Very honored to be with you, and I have a desire in the time that I have to just add value to you. And I have a book that comes out in probably about February this next year called Leadershift. And it's all about how you adjust and shift as a leader to sustain and strengthen your leadership. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that, but I want to give you some foundational stuff first in the area of leadership. I wrote a book a few years ago called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. That's the #1 selling leadership book ever written. And I want to talk to you about two laws, kind of foundational for the rest of our time together. The first law is the law of the lid, L-I-D, and the law of the lid just simply says that how well we lead determines how well we succeed. It's from this law that the statement comes, everything rises and falls on leadership. When leadership's good, everything gets a lot better. When leadership's bad, everything gets a lot worse. And that's very true. That's true in education, it's true in government, it's true in business, true in religion. It's a true fact that everything rises and falls on leadership. And the law of the lid basically says what our leadership potential is, or what our leadership skill set is right now, is going to determine the growth of our business, the growth of how well we really do in life. So let me visually illustrate it for a moment. Let's say I'm an average leader, and so from a 1 to a 10, I'm a 5. So if this hand represents my leadership lid, this is really my skill set. This is how well, I guess, John Maxwell leads. If my leadership lid is a 5, then my business will be a 4. It'll come under that lid, and what it won't do is it won't go higher. Never has in the history of mankind, so it's not going to now. If I'm a 5 leader, what I have as far as my work and my business is going to be a 4, 3, 2, or 1. In the history of mankind, if the leadership lid of an organization is this, they've just never gotten up over that lid and just kept growing in spite of poor leadership. Now, that's the reason I'm so passionate about teaching leadership. Because a person, once we know that, and once we understand that, and then once we realize that we can develop ourselves as a leader, we can grow as a leader. When I do Q&A, probably one of the top 3 questions I'm asking in that kind of a forum is people look at me and they'll raise their hand and they'll say, John, our leader's born. And whenever they ask me, are leaders born? I always give them the same answer. Of course they are. Think about that question. I've never met an unborn leader. Don't particularly want to either. Now what they're really asking is are there some people when they're born, they've got leadership gifts, and so they go to the front of the line, and some people when they're born, they don't have leadership gifts, so they go to the back of the line and kind of hope that somebody at the front of the line is going to lead them well. But what I want you to know is that no matter where you are, and no matter what your lid is, no matter what my lid is right now, I can develop myself as a leader. 25 years ago, I wrote a book called Developing the Leader Within You. Peter Drucker, a management expert that just really served people so well for many years on management, was a mentor and a good friend of mine. And when I wrote the book, Developing the Leader Within You, he said, John, it's a breakthrough book, which it was, because he said it's the first book that basically said you can develop leadership abilities and skills, and you can improve and you can get better. So if we go back to the visual illustration for a moment of the law of the lid, and if I'm an average leader, I'm a 5, which means my business is going to be a 4. It's going to come under that. What it means is that I can really develop and grow myself. I can get better. And I can go from a 5 to a 6 to a 7, maybe up to an 8. And the moment that I lift that lid, the moment I lift my leadership lid, now I lift the incredible potential of growing and building my business. And for almost 50 years now, that's basically what I've done. I've helped organizations, I've helped people lift their lid. And the moment that happens, they get a breakthrough. And all of a sudden, when they learn to lead better, influence people better, all of a sudden, everything gets better under them. That's the law of the lid. There's one other law that I want to kind of just take a moment and share out of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and that's the law of process. And the law of process says that leaders develop daily, not in a day. In other words, it's a journey. Leadership's a verb more than a noun. It's not so much title, it's not so much position, it's process. And what I've discovered is this is the Achilles heel to many, many organizations, because they think that leadership is title, or they think it's position. And it is, but that's the lowest level of leadership. There are 5 levels of leadership, and the lowest level by far in leadership is position and title. So we get a position, we get a title, we say, okay, now I'm a leader. No, we're not a leader, we just have a title or a position that says that we lead. But we may not lead well, we may lead horribly. It means very, very little. But leadership itself is a journey, it's a process. And so I have several companies, but one of the companies works with corporations, trains them, does leadership development with them, helps them try to develop a leadership culture. And so they'll call us in and they'll say, okay, what we want is we need a lot more leaders. And so, do you have like a 2-day seminar that would just raise up some leaders in our organization? And I said, no, we really don't have that. It's not that quick. It's not that easy. And a lot of organizations, they want to microwave leaders. They really do. They literally want to have a leadership microwave, stick their leaders in there, punch some numbers, and zap them. And I watch them do it all the time. That's why they have so many, they have so many leaders that aren't thorough and aren't complete. And we need to stop microwaving leaders, and we need to start crock-potting leaders. And in the process of understanding a culture of leadership, which is a behavior that is something more than just a program or a book or an event, what I hope to do today is kind of just encourage you in all the good things that you're doing now, just to begin to allow a little bit of a leadership culture to become part of your life, part of your practice, part of your organization, because it's going to really serve you well. And if that happens, you're going to have to constantly be making adjustments, leadership adjustments. If you would go into a bookstore in the 1980s, you wouldn't find any leadership books in the bookstore. It's very interesting. They'd be management books. And they would be management books because that's what we did. We managed organizations, and management, the first thing they want is for everything to basically stay quite the same so they can manage it well and with excellence. And toward the latter part of the 1980s, change began to occur so quickly that we had to start thinking a little bit more futuristic and get ahead of the game a little bit more. And we needed to see more than others see. And then with the speed of things, we needed to start seeing before others see. And all of a sudden, leadership became the kind of the word and became the thing that people wanted to learn. And so in the early 1990s, bookstores began to be filled with leadership books, and management books became less and less. And leader shifting is all about that process of being able to make adjustments quickly and soon. I'm asked sometimes in Q&A, how have I for 45 years basically stayed at the top of my game? And the answer is very simple. I realize that the game's not the same. It never is the same. Baseball, the game of baseball, it has the same rules, but it's not the same game. It constantly, every game has its uniqueness. Every game calls for different options. Every game calls for different kinds of decisions. It's not like every game is the same, and so therefore, quote, you got it down, and when you got it down, all of a sudden, you can just, really have it perfected, and away we go. Everything changes. In fact, it was Babe Ruth who said, yesterday's home run won't win today's game. And yet a lot of times I watch, and that's exactly where we're kind of thinking, boy, I hit a home run yesterday. That ought to count for something. I had a mentor many, many years ago when I was in my 30s named Olin Hendricks, and Olin Hendricks really taught me a lot about change. And one of the things that I really learned from him very well was the fact that if you're going to grow, there's going to be a continual process of change. And again, that's the reason for leader shifting. I was getting ready recently to speak for a company, and I was on a pre-call with them, and their theme was fast forward. And so as we were just kind of batting around some ideas, they asked me, said, well, what do you think of our theme? I said, oh, I like the theme. I think it's very good. In fact, I said, I think I'll probably come and speak on the theme. It's really good. They said, well, what's fast forward mean to you? And I said, well, the word fast means not only fast, but as you look at the future, fast is going to be faster. It's not going to slow down. It's not going to be slow. Right? When people say, boy, I can hardly wait for things just to kind of settle, I kind of get amused by that and think, I don't think that day's coming. Fast is faster, and when you think of the word forward, forward's shorter. It's much shorter. When I started my life of leadership, you could have what they call a long-range plan that might be 8, 10 years. A mid-range maybe 5, and a short-range plan back then was 2 years. If you had a 2-year plan, it was a short-range plan. Well, anyone knows that today that's a long-range plan. In fact, that's ridiculously long. That's so long-range that really it probably won't really work. And so fast is faster, and forward is shorter. And then you put that with the survey by Right Management that just came out that said that 91% of hiring in the future and the recruiting in the future is going to be on bringing people in who have the ability to not only change but to deal with uncertainty. And when we think of that, we again think of how we have to be flexible and how we have to adjust and how we have to be ready for change. Now, there's a difference between conformity and adaptability. You know, conformity is kind of a negative quality, and it's based on a lot of times becoming average, not standing out. Maybe it's based on fear of rejection somewhere. Adaptability, it's a positive quality that just basically says, I have to be proactive, I have to be adjusting so that I can succeed. I love to play golf, and so one of my companies every year, we sponsor a Pro-Am in Atlanta, and so I get to play golf with some pretty decent senior golfers. And a couple of years ago, I was playing golf with Tom Watson, and he was a delightful guy. We just had a great game and had a wonderful time. And afterwards, I did an interview with him for a podcast. And so I talked to him about winning because he's been a very successful golfer, Pro Hall of Fame golfer. I think 43 victories, if I'm not mistaken, but you won a lot. So I asked him about winning in a highly competitive environment such as golf. Every year I go out to Pebble Beach and I play in the Pro-Am. And one year I was out playing with the pros, and they were telling me that the reason that you have 4 rounds of golf is very simple. 4 rounds of golf is going to determine who really the best golfer is. If you do 1 round of golf, they said any pro that enters if 1 round of golf can win. Anybody can be really good for 1 day, but by 2 days you cut it in half, and the 3rd day you cut it in half again. So by the last day, you've got about 12 to 18 golfers that really have a shot at winning, because you've got to put 4 days together consistently. And so I was interviewing Tom about his victories, and that's a lot of victories, and you've been very successful. And he made an incredible statement. He said, John, I've only had 5 wins on the PGA Tour. Only 5 times have I ever won that I didn't have to make any adjustments during the tournament. My swing was just so good. Everything was in such rhythm. Timing was just perfect. And he said, I just kind of basically on the first day, the first tee, knew I had my game and my act together, and I kept it together for 4 days and literally never made an adjustment. He said only 5 of those 43 victories was I able to maintain the same pace and the speed and rhythm and everything and win. I just kept doing the same thing and won. And then he used the phrase, he said, for the other victories, I had to adjust my way to victory. I had to make changes, and maybe after the first round, I'm back out there on the driving range, and I'm having to adjust a little bit of my grip or my stance or whatever it is. And he said, I won all those tournaments because I adjusted my way to victory. And so we got in a very interesting conversation about people that are not highly successful in the Pro Tour. And basically, he said the bottom line is that they either lack the confidence or the awareness to realize that they need to adjust their game to stay in contention to possibly win. And when I thought of that illustration, and I think of leader shifting in our life, it just all started to come together for me. And so what I would like to do is take, maybe a half a dozen thoughts here for you really quickly on how do you and I leader shift successfully? How do we make that shift that allows us to stay on top of our leadership game and allows our business to do well and allows us to succeed? So let me give you a few right now. Number one, continually learn, unlearn, and relearn. Harvard Business Review says that now if you just get a bachelor's degree in college, it has a 5-year shelf span. That's all it has. Basically, after about 5 years, you're going to have to pick up some more stuff and learn some more things that you didn't learn in college to basically stay in the game. I wrote a book probably 15 years ago, called Today Matters. And it was a book about the importance of now and the importance of where you are right now. And I said we over-exaggerate yesterday, and we overestimate tomorrow, but we underestimate today. And the adjustments that we can make today really help us set up our future. I was having dinner I was having dinner with a very successful author when I was very young in writing books. And so he was kind of a mentor of mine, this was maybe I don't know, maybe my fifth or sixth book. And as we're having dinner, he looked at me and said, "John, is this your best book?" And I said, "It is. It's my best book." And he said, "Are you sure of that?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I worked harder on this. I prepared more. I just hung in there, and I've given it my very best shot." And he said, always before you let a book be released, make sure it's your best book, because he said you never want to disappoint your readers. Because if all of a sudden your book isn't up to the standards of your previous one, and they read it and say, "Wow, that wasn't very good," and they're a little disappointed. He said the next time they look at one of your books that comes out, they're going to say, "Well, should I buy it?" He said, never put the reader in that position. Always get better and improve until where they just automatically pick up the name, they pick up the book, and away they go. And as I thought of that, I thought to myself how important this is in our life, to constantly be giving it our best and improving and tweaking and just literally hanging in the game and just really staying right there. I have a coaching company, and there's a cycle that we teach our coaches, because we teach them to be entrepreneurs. We have about 21,000 coaches in about 160 countries. And I want to give you this cycle of success because I think it's a big one, and I think it really works, and it really gets back into this leadershifting and where we are. It goes like this: test, fail, learn, improve, re-enter. And the cycle never stops. We test, we fail, we learn, we improve, and re-enter. And then we're back to testing and to failing, because when you start testing, there's a great amount of failure. I mean, that's why they call it trial and error, because you don't know. You're in virgin territory, and you're going places where you haven't. And leadershifting really is it's essential to be testing and failing. But in the process of the failure, it's not the failure that we focus on. It's what do we learn from the failure. And it's kind of like, don't tell me about your losses. It's what did you learn from those losses. In fact, I wrote a book several years ago called Failing Forward, and the whole principle of the book was the fact that if we fail correctly, we even when we fail, we can go forward. We can make some advance. But test and fail and learn, and then improve. And learning isn't the end in itself. It's the whole issue of improving ourselves, getting better. And only do we re-enter after we've improved it. Sometimes we see people and we kind of call them tenacious, and we admire their tenacity because they get knocked down and they get back up, and they get knocked down, they just keep getting back up, and we say, my gosh, they're incredible. They're so tenacious, and they're not really tenacious. They're just kind of stupid, to be honest with you. In fact, if you keep getting knocked down while you're down there, why don't you just hang there for a while and figure out what's knocking you down and get that figured out. And so the whole learning part is, okay, how do I change? What changes do I need to make? What adjustments, what leaderships do I need to make to improve myself so that I can become better? Awareness is so essential in leadershifting. You can't fix what you're not aware of. And so as I wrote this book, I'm trying to help people understand that we need to know ourselves, and we need to know what we do well, we need to know what we don't do well, and we need to be able to have people speak into our life so that we can make some of these shifts. Because when people talk about blind spots, that's what they are. They're blind spots. And a lot of self-awareness is we don't have the ability a lot of times to be self-aware. We've got to have somebody who cares for us, who knows us well and knows our skill set and what we do, to speak into our life, to help us, to come alongside of us, to kind of tweak us. We hear the expression a lot that experience is the best teacher. Well, that's really not true. I mean, it's a wonderful statement, but it's still not true. If experience were the best teacher, everybody as they got older would get better because they've all had experience. Experience has nothing to teach us unless we evaluate that experience. The learning of the experience isn't in the experience itself, it's in the evaluation. Okay, what did I experience? What did I learn from that? When our children, as our two children were growing up, Margaret and I would all the time, after every experience, which we tried to have a lot of experiences for their life, we'd always ask them, okay, now that we've had the experience, what did you love and what did you learn? What did you love? What did you learn? What did you love? What did you learn? And we constantly took them through that process. Because what we want them to do is go through an experience and enjoy it, obviously, but more than that, we want them to extract from it, to learn from it, and to pull out from it. And so that whole process of learning, unlearning, and then relearning, it's all in the area of evaluating experience. I have a friend that had it's really not been real successful. He's been 25 years in his profession. And so we were talking one evening, and he said, I've had 25 years of experience, and I knew him well enough I could it was just private, so no one else around. He said, I've had 25 years of experience, and I said, Joe, you really haven't. I said, you've had 1 year of experience 25 times. And you're not doing the cycle. You're not doing the cycle of testing, failing, learning, improving, re-entering in that whole process. And leadershifting is all about that very fact that we are constantly in that state of doing those things on a continual basis. Another point on leadershifting that I would like to make for you this afternoon for a moment is that leadershifting really relies on speed, but it thrives on timing. And those two things are different, but they're very essential to leadership quickly. As I spoke of earlier, management books got out of favor when all of a sudden we realized that you couldn't manage to the rate of the speed that you're in. You see, all leaders, regardless of country, regardless of culture, all leaders have basically one thing in common. And come in different sizes, different shapes. But you go to any culture, any country, and you find a leader, and you'll find that all leaders have this in common. They see more than others see, and they see before others see. In other words, they just see the bigger picture. I'm not saying they're smarter. In fact, I don't think they are. But they see the bigger picture. They see more than others see, and not only do they see more than others see, they see before others see. Now, when I started leading, before wasn't that important. But today it's become very essential. In fact, I could have basically said when I started off as a leader, seeing more than others see was basically the big advantage. But today it's almost been replaced by seeing before others see, being able to see it quicker than others, and it gives us a huge advantage. Leaders have an incredible advantage. One of my companies, we do a lot of transformation with countries, and this year we spent time in Saudi Arabia, in Kenya, just came back from Guatemala. But we work with the presidents of the countries and the leaders of the country, trying to help them create transformational change through small groups teaching values. And in the process of doing that, when we go in to work with them, what we've discovered is the fact that the great advantage that you have in transformation over others. When I speak with presidents of countries, and it's just the two of us, the question I ask them all the time is very simple. I ask them, is it getting better for the people that you lead because you're the leader, or is it getting worse? And that's an essential question. And are you seeing more than others seen? And are you seeing before? I mean, there used to be a first, second, and third. I don't think there's much of a third anymore. There's a first and second. And I'm predicting with fast forward and that mindset that there's going to be a time when there's just a first. And it gives us a great advantage when we do see before others see, because it's not how fast you are that determines your success. It's how quickly you started. I was having dinner with Gail Devers one night, her and her husband and her little girl. And you probably recognize that name. Gail Devers is probably the most successful female track athlete in Olympic history in America. And she won medals in 3 different Olympic events. In fact, the night I was having dinner with her, she was trying for her 4th Olympic event in the time trials, and she was running against young ladies that were young enough to, literally to be her daughter. So there was that kind of an age gap. And so we're having a great conversation about the Olympics and athletics and et cetera. So I thought I'd have some fun toward the end of our dinner, and I said, Gail, I've been thinking about this all evening. I just want to just share this with you. I said, I think if you and I ran a 100-yard race, I think I could win. And the moment that I said that to her, I wish you could have seen her face. She looked at me in total disbelief. She said, what did you say? I said, well, I've just been thinking about this just during dinner. And I just think that if we ran for 100 yards, I think I could win. And she looked at her husband and she said, did you hear this? And then what really got disgusting is she looked at me, and she not looked at me, but she looked at my body. And this well-toned athlete is looking at the Pillsbury Doughboy over here. And it's just beyond anything she can comprehend that I think I could win the race. And this competitive juices, I could just see it in Gail. They're rising. And I've got her about, 30 seconds away from taking me outside of the restaurant and saying, we're going to run a block, boy. We're just going to run a block. And I got her right on the edge. I said, now, Gail, let me just explain something to you, because I really thought this through, and this is really true. If you and I ran a 100-yard race and you gave me an 80-yard head start, I could win. Well, yeah, if I gave you an 80-yard, yeah, you could. Yeah, okay, you could do. If I gave you that. Debating whether it should be 70 or 80 yards. And I really wanted to say 70. I honestly, the man in me wanted to say 70, but reality kept saying, I don't think so. I don't think so. But on 80 yards, I knew so. This fat body could roll over and get there first. And of course, then we had a big laugh at it. And then I did a major leadership teaching, and the teaching is speed doesn't count near as much as timing. When did you get started? And the moment that we begin to understand that in leadership, once you can see before others see, well, the advantage you have is that you and I can get started quicker than others. Now, the challenge for that is that because you see more than others see, and because you see before others see as leaders, the challenge is that if we're not careful, we can manipulate people. And we can begin to move them for our advantage, which is always wrong. It devalues people. But done correctly with the right mindset and the right motivations and the right heart, it's a tremendous advantage to be able to see before others see. And in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, the 2 hardest laws for me to teach, the 2 hardest laws for me to write, were the laws of intuition and the laws of timing. And I run into people all the time, and they'll say, well, I'm not an intuitive person. And I say, oh, yes, you are. Everybody's intuitive. All of you today, everybody's intuitive. Where we're intuitive is in our giftedness. If you're gifted in a certain area, there is an intuitiveness that you have in that area that people who are not gifted do not have. So to find your intuitiveness, you go find out what your giftedness is. And so giftedness determines intuition, and context, seeing more, it determines the timing, the flexibility. It's kind of like when you see the bandwagon, it's just too late to lead. And if you're around a table and everybody else is caught on before you, you're probably not the leader of the pack. Because leaders see more than others see, they see before others see, and they understand the value of speed, but they understand even the greater value of timing. Another thought I want to give you on leadershifting correctly is that when you leadership correctly, the big picture, whatever it is, what you envision, the big picture just keeps getting bigger. And it not only keeps getting bigger, it becomes clearer. And that's one of the beautiful things about vision with leaders is the fact that it expands, it gets bigger, and it gets clearer. And leadershifting is all about growth. It's all about expansion. I shared with you that 25 years ago I wrote the book, Developing the Leader Within You. So for the 25th anniversary, my publisher came back and said, John, would you revise it? And I said, I would be glad to revise it. And in my contract, I had to revise the book 15% to have credibility, obviously. And because of experience, because I've done this before, I looked at him and said, that'll be no problem. 15% is way too low of a figure. I'll dive into it and I'll start revising it. And I did. So now the Developing the Leader Within You that I wrote 25 years ago has just come out in the last year, called Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. And so when I started revising it and rewriting it, the first thing that happens is when I looked at the book, and I mean, it was an incredible bestseller, but when I looked at the book, I got very discouraged. And I thought, this isn't very good. And I just thought, wow. So I started revising and tweaking, and when I finished, I revised 83% of the book. In fact, somebody asked me the other day, said, did that make you feel bad that you had to revise that much of the book? I said, no, not really, because you see, 25 years ago, the book and I were literally on the same page. But what's happened in my 25 years of growing and leading? I'm not on the same page. I just keep learning and growing and developing and expanding, getting better, learning more, layering my learning, that whole process. 25 years later, I'm here. Those words on the page, they haven't changed at all. There's a huge gap. Now I've got to go back and I've got to revise it. And as I go back revising, what I know today is so much better than what I knew then. Well, nothing's going to happen and nothing's going to satisfy me, so I keep working it until I try to bring it back up to where I am. And I think the thing that I would just say to all of us today is that if you look back at what you did 5 years ago and you're still happy with it, you probably aren't growing. It's a process of the fact that there's a discontent that comes out of the fact that I know more today than I knew yesterday. And in this leadershifting in my life, making these adjustments, making these changes, the big picture, it keeps getting bigger. It keeps getting clearer. I lived in a farming community, and I grew up in it. And I remember in my business when I wanted to get a loan, I went to a banker friend of mine, and he said, let me tell you how I loan money to farmers. This was kind of amazing for I was a 24-year-old kid then. He said, I ask them when they come in for a loan if they're fencing in or fencing out. And he said, fencing out means that they bought some land, and so they want to put their fences out further because they want to do more crops or more livestock, whatever. They're expanding. And he said, if they're fencing out, I always loan them money. But he said, if they're fencing in, I never do. Because all of a sudden they're trying to hold what they have, and they're trying to maintain what they have. And remember this, again, the difference, management's beautiful. Nothing wrong with management, nothing wrong with leadership, but management wants everything to stay the same. Leadership, it thrives on things changing because all of the opportunity and the possibility is in the changing environment, not in the environment that is the same or solid or maybe stable. He said, so if they're fencing in, I'm much less prone to loan them money than if they're fencing out. And so in leadershifting, if you're leadershifting correctly, the picture's getting bigger, the picture's getting clearer. Yesterday's picture just doesn't satisfy anymore. That it means you're leadershifting in the right direction. Let me give you another thought about this. if you and I are leader shifting well, we live in today, but we think about tomorrow. I have a sign in my office that I just love, and it just basically says, yesterday ended last night. It just did. And if I had a bad day yesterday, I love that sign. I just say, oh my gosh, thank God, that one's gone. I put that one to bed. And if I had a good day, but can I tell you, even if you're successful, yesterday and last night. And one of the things that I've realized is that to successful people, they're constantly doing an autopsy on success. And they're constantly looking at where they are, and they're saying, okay, well, that's why I tell all my people in my companies, you got 24 hours to celebrate when you have a victory, and you got 24 hours to cry when you have a defeat. But you got 24 hours. And after the 24 hours, right back at it. I mean, okay, we live in today, but we've got to constantly think about tomorrow, because the future has a way of arriving unannounced. And leadership understands that. And leader shifting understands that. And so there's a constant work in our life of realizing that and constantly being ready to make those adjustments as we see them coming down the road. I was privileged to be mentored by John Wooden, the great basketball coach at UCLA. Sports Illustrated said in the last century he was the greatest coach of any sport. And he had a lot of great statements that he taught me, a lot of great expressions that I learned from him. But one of them was that when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare. And he was constantly mentoring me about constantly being in a prepared state, so when the opportunity comes, you can take advantage of that. He also was great on the statement: make every day your masterpiece. Make every day count. Make it your masterpiece. And so you live in today, but you're constantly thinking about the future. So one of my worlds that I live in is the book world. I write every day. In fact, I have a rule of 5 with my writing. Every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions, and every day I write. And I just follow that rule of 5 routine on a daily basis. Now, I don't write the same amount of time every day, but every day I write. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, John, because I've done about 102 books and derivatives of books. And I say, wow, how do you write that many books? Well, it's very simple. Every day. Every day I write. And and they'll say, well, how do you do it? Well, I write it one word at a time, really. I do. I've never been able to splash paragraphs on that page. But the consistency is writing. And so we were a few years ago up in New York doing what we call book auctioning with about 5 publishers, going from publisher to publisher with the agents. And basically what that's all about is they bid on some of your manuscripts. And so I was having a meeting with my team and my agents in the hotel in New York the night before we'd spend the next 2 days going to 5 different publishing companies. So we were developing a strategy. It was a good meeting. And so when it was all over, I just kind of pulled away from everybody and I went over to the corner of the lobby and I asked myself, when I go to that publishing meeting, let me think of how the publisher thinks, not how do I think as an author. If I was a publisher and I was going to talk to me, what would I want to know about me that would kind of say, I think I want to sign you up? And I came to the conclusion that if I was a publisher, at that time I'd written maybe 45 books. If I was a publisher, I would look at somebody like me and I'd ask them, do you have any more good books in you? Because the last thing I want to do is give you a contract and you've run out of gas. So I sat over in the corner, and I'm talking about leadershifting now, constantly thinking, I live today, but I'm thinking the future, and I began to write down all the books that I wanted to write, that I hadn't yet written, and why I wanted to write them. and why I thought it would help me and help people if I wrote those books. And so I wrote, it didn't take me long, in 30 minutes I probably wrote 11 books, titles of books that I'd like to write. And we were going to Random House the next morning. That was our first publishing company. And I'll never forget, we sat in Random House with about 7 or 8 of their people and a few of ours. And so we're starting to talk about books and partnerships and would they want to, engage with me. And the CEO of Random House, he said, John, we've read your stuff. We got you wired. In fact, he said, you've written more leadership material than any man's ever lived. He said, you already have more leadership content than anyone. And he said, I was just thinking last night, I was just asking myself, I wonder if you have any more books left in you. And I smiled and I said, I do. I said, can I have a few minutes? And he said, sure. So I began to talk to him about the books that I wanted yet to write. And I got very passionate about, very excited about it. I stood up, kind of walked around the boardroom and would talk to him about how it's going to help him, that whole process. And I just watched the eyes. And I was on my 5th book when he's just held up his hand and said, look, he said, I got it. We want to sign you. Now, what happened in that meeting was I was living in today, but I was thinking about tomorrow. And leadership has there's an expression I use called advance attraction. And advance attraction is when I know what I want to accomplish, when I really know what I want to accomplish, then my mind begins to think things that will allow me to accomplishment, and my eyes will begin to see things, my ears begin to hear things, my hands begin to do things. All this stuff begins to come together, and it all begins to come together because I have a sense of advanced attraction. I begin to attract things to me even in my future because that's where I am already. There's a sense of anticipation in leadershifting that begins to be pretty amazing. Let me give you 2 more thoughts here and we'll wrap it up for today. This one's really important, I think, in leadershifting, and that is that we move forward courageously in the midst of uncertainty. Life basically expands or shrinks in proportion of our courage. And leaders who leadershift well, they have uncertainties in their life just like followers do. They don't have all the answers, but they're courageous to act upon what they intuitively think and believe when other people don't. Because the tendency is that during uncertainty, people freeze. They don't want to make decisions. They want to hold. I can still think back, and you can remember well, in 9/11, when that tragedy hit our country. One of my companies is a stewardship company where we raise money for nonprofits. We raised, I don't know, maybe $3 billion, $4 billion for nonprofit organizations. And we'd average sign a contract every day with another organization. But when 9/11 hit, from September 11th to the end of the year, we never signed another contract. Everybody froze. They were uncertain what's happening, and everybody just they pulled back in. Understandable. Fear. And I've watched and observed that what happens during these emotional, traumatic times, that followers they'll hold back and they'll wait, and they're looking for somebody. They're looking for some leader who will basically have the courage to step out and say, okay, let's go forward. I don't have all the answers, but let's go forward. And this uncertainty demands that I have, that you have, courage to do the right thing, moral courage to stand for the right thing, to make the hard decisions. I shared with you earlier that one of my companies, we do transformation of countries. And what we do is we understand that transformation happens in small groups. It doesn't happen in lectures like this or in large audiences. It happens when 6 or 8 people are discussing and sharing and integrating values thinking. And so we have values curriculum, and that's exactly what we do. We just get we go to the 7 streams of influence in any culture: government, business, media, arts, education, religion, and we get buy-in from the top down. So we basically do transformation. Influence goes top down. So we start with the top and let that influence filter down. But then we start small in round tables, and then we go to large, because mass movements don't begin with masses. They never had. If you study transformational movements, all transformational movements begin with a very few people. But all transformational movements also begin with somebody having a good value that they believe that their community or their society has lost. And so as we work with these countries and engage with these countries, we have successes, we have some misses, but we've done pretty well. And we've seen a lot of transformation happen. And I was asked by an interviewer the other day, they said, well, do you think you'll ever see a country transformed? And I said, I said, the odds are very high that I won't. But that doesn't stop me from trying. That doesn't stop me from putting a lot of time and energy and resources and a lot of people into this cause, because the cause is right. And even if I don't see a country transformed, I'm going to see communities transformed, and I'm going to see lives transformed, and we're going to see some good things happen. In fact, if you noticed, what was it, 3.5 years ago in Guatemala, when the president of Guatemala was ousted by a movement of the people. It was the first Latin American president to ever be ousted without a coup, of a military coup. Literally, the people, about 120,000 people would go down the square every Saturday and for 2 hours silently protest. Great protesters, give water to the policemen, clean up for an hour after it was all over. But basically, we're saying, we got a corrupt government, got a corrupt president, and it needs to be changed. And literally over the process of about 7 months, the president resigned. He's in prison. The vice president in prison. In fact, 378 politicians are in prison today in Guatemala. Well, that was all our movement. That was a values-based grassroots movement on transformation. And the validity of the point is, the fact is, we're never certain that we're going to accomplish everything we want to accomplish, but we lead anyway. And moral courage is just doing the right thing, not because you have the odds of winning. You do the right thing because it's the right thing. Several years ago, when Time Warner was my publisher, the head of Time Warner had a dinner with me in New York City, and this was right after Enron and a lot of the business and the lack of ethics in the business community. And so he asked me, he said, John, I would like for you to write a book on business ethics. And I smiled and I said, well, I can't do that. And he said, well, why not? I said, because there's no such thing as business ethics. And he looked at me and said, what do you mean? He said, he started giving me I said, I know all the examples, I got that, but that's not a business ethic problem. Well, he said, if it's not a business ethic problem, what is it? I said, it's an ethic problem. Period. This is very simple. If you have good ethics, it works in business, it works in your family, works in your community, works everywhere. If you've got bad ethics, it doesn't. You don't categorize or compartmentalize ethics. And again, this leadershifting is an understanding and a realization that in the process of getting better and growing and doing better, that you're constantly aware all the time of the fact that you're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, but it's okay. It's okay. Because you're acting on the best interest for the people and hopefully for society. Let me wrap it up by just one more leadershifting thought. And that is, if we're going to leadership successfully, we need to realize that today's best will not meet tomorrow's challenges. And leadershifting is all about improving, changing, adjusting in a positive way to get better. You see, everyone can improve and everything can be improved, and every day has improvement possibilities. So I was in a discussion with my team. We were doing an international trip for about 2 weeks last year. And we were having a dinner discussion after a day of doing some leadership stuff. And so one of the team members said, John, I watch you really celebrate. You just celebrate when we do something, we get a win. You're the first one to say, let's celebrate. So I watch you celebrate, but then the next day I watch discontent come back in your life. And your celebration's very short-lived, and all of a sudden you're restless again to get better and to improve, and you're back to challenging us and stretching us, and you don't seem to rest long on the victories. And they said, can you tell us what goes on the inside of you? And so I said, well, I think I can. And so I began to talk to them about the fact that there's a difference between best and better. And Leadershifting really understands this. And best is for the moment. Best is for now. Best is for right now for me. And so what that means is as I'm sharing with you, knowing that you had this incredible theme of being able to do changes that will just really give you a good future. What that means is, I'm doing my best to present, to share, to give you thoughts, to stimulate your mind, to help you to kind of maybe become a little bit more adaptable, flexible, make those leadership. I'm doing my very best now. And if I really do my very best now, at the end of it, I celebrate. I yay, and I'm happy, and, touchdown, the whole deal. But best is for the moment. And I tell people every day, when people tell you to give 100% all day, that's not reality. You can't give 100% all day. You're human. You and I get tired, and we get fatigued. And so I say, you don't have to give 100% all day, but you have to give 100% in the key parts of your day. And for you, you don't have to be at 100% reading the paper, but you probably want to be at 100% in surgery. And there's, you got to pick your 100% spots. And so best is for the moment, best is for now. But then I explained to them, I said, best is for the moment, but tomorrow best doesn't count. Because it was my best at that moment, but I have to improve, I have to get better, I have to learn. Certainly I don't think that whatever I did yesterday was as good as it will ever get. When somebody says, man, that's as good as it's ever going to get, I just say, well, shoot, if it's as good as it's ever going to get, then just go die. Hello? It's over. And so best, which was for the moment, tomorrow is the ground floor which I stand on to get better, to do my best to improve myself. And so even though I've written the book Leadershifting, I'm here and I'm kind of working on this lecture for you off of the book that hasn't even been published yet. And I spent I was in Dallas speaking this morning to a group of business guys and ladies, and then I jumped on the plane. I'm here, and then I go from here to Florida. So on the plane, I'm just tweaking and working the teaching, and so the book hasn't even come out, and it'll come out in February, and I'm already disappointed in part of it. I don't know, what do? Do you just tell the book, buy the book because it was the best I could do at the moment, but call me if you want something a little bit better? And the whole point of it is there's a beautiful sense of constantly understanding that no matter how good it is now, it has potential to be better. Back to John Wooden in closing. He was the one who had the expression, make every day your masterpiece. And he would say, John, I would watch one of my basketball players in practice, and they just weren't giving me 100%. I knew it, team knew it, they knew it. So I'd walk over to him, and I'd call him a name, and I'd say, you're not giving 100% today, are you? Well, coach, no. Wow, I studied late for an exam last night. I'm tired, or my girlfriend broke up with me, and all the things that anybody goes through, and no, I'm not giving you 100%. And coach would say, okay. He said, what you got to understand is this. I know what you're thinking. What you're thinking is that you'll give about 70% now, but you'll make it up tomorrow. You'll come back in tomorrow, and your body will be fresh, and you'll give me a quote 130%. And he said, I just want you to know you can't do that. The best you can ever give me when you're at the very best is 100%. So if you're giving me 70% today, understand, you never make that up. You've just lost 30%. And if you have very many days where you lose a percentage of your potential, he says you'll never become the person, the player that you really want to be. And when I think of that, I think of myself so many times of, again, the difference between better and best in that whole process, and the need to continually leadership. And why do we need to leadership in our business, our companies, and our practices? It's very simple. The only guarantee that tomorrow is going to get better than today is that we are improving and growing today. It's the only guarantee. And that's what I wish for every one of you. You do wonderful work. You help people in a beautiful way. It's been an honor for me to have an hour with you. And I applaud who you are, and I applaud what you do. But I just want to encourage you that everything rises and falls on leadership. And the only way for you to improve is to expand and get better as a leader. And you can, and you will, as you make these leaderships. When the book comes out, there are 11 different leaderships that I've had to make in my life to adjust and to get better so that I could keep improving and stay on the top of my game. I hope that when it comes out, maybe you'll find it something, a good, worthy read for you to get better in what you do in your profession. But regardless of that, thanks for giving me an hour of your time. I've enjoyed it immensely. And remember again, grandchildren are God's gift to you for not killing your children. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, you've got three. I'm going to have to get my glasses here. Okay, there are three questions that have come in. You spoke of business ethics. For 20 years, our colleges have taught moral relativism. Why are we surprised by the Enrons and the Bear Stearns? Well, okay, the question that's asked has already got the obvious answer. In fact, the Chicago Tribune interviewed me on, can you teach business ethics in college? And I said, of course you can. But I said it doesn't have great value unless you practice the business ethics, unless you model those business ethics. Please repeat your rule of five. Well, I gave you, I didn't really teach the rule of five, which is one of my favorite teachings, but I didn't do that today. But I shared with you 5 things I do as a writer. So I think that's probably what you're referring to. Every day every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions, every day I write. And I continue. Now, by the way, I didn't say all day, I just said every day. Because what I've discovered is consistency compounds. And so it doesn't mean that I have to be intense and do it all day, but it does mean that I have to do it every day. It's the everyday that brings the magic to it. And then the third question, my impressions are that most staff and providers find great comfort in stability and are stressed with change. You got that right. So how do leaders inspire and educate the need to adapt and change? What tools, techniques do you use? What we do, well, we do several things, but one of the things we do is we have what we call, I have 6 companies. And we have what we call the 10-80-10 practice. And what basically that means is on the first 10%, the key leaders are in on how do we get this, whatever we're going to try to accomplish, how do we get it on track and get it started. It kind of begins with all's well that begins well, okay? So we get into 10%, but then we go to the 80%, and those who have to implement and have to create and have to develop, they do the 80%. But what we know is that in the process of them doing the 80%, we're going to find all kind of challenges, all kind of things we didn't understand, all kind of problems that we weren't aware of. And so we come back in on the last 10% to again adjust it and tweak it. So which is all's well that ends well. And we just found it to be a terrific practice. In fact, what we do with all of our companies, with all of our people that need to produce, is in December we have a 2-day retreat. And we bring them all in together, and all we do is 10-80-10. We do 10-80-10 on whatever their responsibility is. We help them lay out the first 10%, and then they do 80%. And in March, we come back and we visit again to do the back end 10%. And that allows us to make the adjustments because we're coming in on that back end, and every time, not most times, every time we come back on that back end 10%, every time, we find that we miss things. We just were wrong in what we thought, we just have to adjust it and make it better. And so I think that type of flexibility is essential in leadership. And you're right. Most management office people want everything to stay the same because they want to get it down. We want to get it down, and that's an impossibility, especially if you're successful. The more successful you are, the more change. You see, the greatest detriment to tomorrow's success is today's success. That's a fact. And the moment that I feel that I've got it down, or I've got it figured out, or I've got a formula, then I'm going to become outdated very quickly. So I think I answered the 3 questions. Thanks for asking them. Hope they helped you, and have a good day.